Hello there, YouTubers, TikTokers, subscribers, non-subscribers, and all of you who are watching this video. Welcome to my channel. I'm your host, RoseRed17, and this video is about 3-story crossover manga of Rave Master, Fairy Tail, and Eden Zero, called Heroes. Now, I have always done reviews by volume, but since there's only 10 chapters, I have decided to talk about all of them in this one video, including the bonus chapter. So the first chapter starts off with the classic Nalu moment on the beach, with Lucy losing her top blaming Natsu when it turns out to be Happy. Off to a good start, I see. Lucy starts chasing after Happy as we see the other members of Fairy Tail hanging out and relaxing. Lucy continues chasing after Happy to get her top back, as Natsu seems bored but then smells delicious fruit, and he decides to follow the smell and wanders into the forest where he finds the fruit, but he also ends up meeting Shiki from the Eden Zero. They both end up grabbing the fruit, and at the same time, and I'm not kidding, they end up fighting over it, until Rebecca comes along and points out that there's more than one fruit. So the two boys realize that they were fighting over nothing, and they start to have a chat. Now, I wouldn't be that surprised if these two were fighting over something so silly like some fruit. After all, these two are almost the same. Now, the key word is almost. Personally, I think Shiki is written as a better character than Natsu, which I will discuss at the end of this video. Natsu introduced himself as he claimed to be a wizard from a wizard guild, and the two were surprised that there are wizards out there that use magic instead of ether gears. Shiki also introduced himself and he was about to claim he's from the Eden Zero, but then Rebecca stopped him and told him not to discuss about space and not what. She brings Shiki over to the corner away from Natsu to not say anything about space or the Eden Zero. But little did they know that Natsu has sensitive hearing and can hear everything they're saying. But he has no clue what they're saying, so they're pretty much in the clear. The two came back and they claimed that they're looking for a friend who got lost on the planet. Natsu decided to help because 1, he has nothing else to do, and 2, he thinks they are nice people, so he decided he wants to help out. But of course, Shiki does his "will you be my friend" line to Natsu, and he's already accepted him as a friend. Later in the village, we meet this guy known as the Creator, who seemed to be meditating as this young man came along and mentioned something about an oasis. This young man turns out to be his disciple and told him not to worry. He shows off his creativity as the citizens are familiar with his tricks, and then we get the introduction from Haru, Ellie, and Musica from Rave Master. Wow, I have to say, it's only the first chapter, and there's a lot going on. Well, let's see what's going to happen next. Shiki, Rebecca, and Pino notice that there is another cat named Happy, but the difference is that he is not a robot. They meet with the others, such as Lucy, Gray, Urza, Wendy, and Carla. The crew seem to be getting along with each other, especially these two. While during the conversation, Gray gives out a reminder that Shiki and his group came to the island to look for someone, and that person is Hamura, who came there for training. But according to Rebecca, she never came back. But then Lucy mentioned a town to the north, and Natsu and Shiki decide to head towards that town to search for Hamura. Now, speaking of Hamura, she is found in a jail cell, and apparently during her training that he got to her and then fainted. The next thing she knew was that she's in a cell with her cellmates being the two most annoying characters from both Fairy Tail and Rave Master. Next, we see Haru taking down a bunch of soldiers along with Ellie and Musica. Haru makes his way to the old man who was the Creator. Then we soon learn that his powers is coming from a shadow stone known as the Oasis. But the old man doesn't seem to be tainted with darkness, as he pointed out. Meanwhile, Natsu and Shiki are inside the village and they witness this familiar plant. But they also ended up running into Let and Julia as they overheard Natsu and Shiki's conversation about the Oasis, thinking that they were here to take it. The four of them started to fight each other all throughout the town. Meanwhile, Haru managed to receive the Shadow Stone as the old man learned about its corruption of good hearts and decided to give the stone away. But his disciple doesn't want that to happen and he ends up stabbing the old man. Oh no, he was the bad guy this whole time, never would have guessed. The disciple takes possession of the Shadow Stone and uses it for his own selfish desires. The power causes the walls and floors to crack, which also caused Haru to fall, but also frees Hamura from her jail cell. Meanwhile, Rebecca and Lucy are calling out for Shiki and Natsu, along with Urza, Gray, and Wendy. But then they were suddenly accidentally attacked by tentacles, which were sent by the disciple who then transformed himself into Genesis. Ow, Jesus mother Christ, what a disgusting pervert! And thank Rave for freezing the tentacles off of them, and then Lucy, Wendy, and Urza cut off the rest of the tentacles. Urza realized that Rebecca isn't fighting back as she told her that her guns is back on the ship, and so Urza gave her a bow and she seemed to be really good with it. Meanwhile, back in town, there is these giant shadow metal monsters attacking the citizens, and a little girl is saved by Natsu and Shiki as Let and Julia decide to call a truce and help them save the town. Meanwhile, Hamura is free from her ropes and now she has to deal with all the shenanigans with Moscow in the mix. Wow, it's just not a good day for her, is it? But the building's starting to break apart as Genesis restores and reorganizes everything into his castle. Haru got separated from Yusuke and Ellie, but he told him to find Let and Julia, but then he ends up going flying and lands on top of Natsu's head as the three are now together in this one panel. Let and Julia end up losing sight of Shiki and Natsu, but they end up running into Pino and then the others while they are still looking for Natsu and Shiki. And speaking of the two, here they are all introducing themselves along with Haru. I actually find it pretty funny that they mention the other two names that mean winter and autumn, as Shiki means all 4 seasons. But Happy here does a little explanation about the two characters that do exist from other series. But then they notice Plu, who was the one character who was present in all 3 of their shows. But then Genesis shows up with a different face that both Haru and Natsu seem to recognize. Haru told Shiki and Natsu to leave, but they decided to stay and help him fight him off. However, they seem to be no match for him even with their best attacks. Yeah, I know this familiar formula. All 3 of them are gonna get him back in the end, I just know it. Meanwhile, Ellie feels that Haru is in trouble as we see him being hung by his neck by Genesis. With Haru in trouble, both Shiki and Natsu go in for a hit, but Genesis moves out of the way and the two of them end up hitting each other in the face. Then they get into a petty fight as Haru, now free, tries to reason with them, but then he gets hit in the face. Genesis had enough of their foolishness and ends up creating his own castle and then he disappears. Shiki and Natsu started blaming each other, but Haru reasoned with them once again and told them that the oasis is the stone that Genesis has in his possession. Shiki thought that the oasis was a place where Hamura went missing, as Natsu doesn't care about the stone and just wanted to get back at the guy for giving his guild a bad name. Haru is the only one who cares about the stone and decided to go after Genesis on his own, and the 3 went their separate ways. Meanwhile, Lucy and Rebecca are now separated from the rest of the crew, and they ended up meeting Ellie. 3 of the main male characters in the last chapter, and now the 3 main female characters in this chapter? I'm liking it. Each girl described the person they are looking for, and then, well, what they have in common is they all have spiky hairs. Then we see Gray running into Musica, and then they both ended up meeting Weiss. Now it's the 2 girls, Julia and Urza, running into these black creatures, but then they were saved by Homura. Now it's Wendy, Carla, and Pino running into Let, who is afraid of Wendy because he learned that she is a dragon slayer, believing that she's going to threaten his life because he's an actual dragon. Genesis starts to attack again on the crew, and this time he's going to attack the members of Fairy Tail in their own guild. Now within the town we see Ruby, Belnika, and Shura noticing the dark creatures. Gray and Musica are taking down the creature while Weiss is building a device which turned out to be a secret weapon he calls Heroes. The girls end up fighting off the dark creatures, but then Lucy ends up getting captured by one of the tentacles and that it decided to take off her top, but Rebecca and Ellie don't bother helping her because it doesn't matter if they see her or not because they're all girls there. But then... wow! Yep. Yeah, you should know by now that's kind of his thing. He just loves groping her. But once he started noticing the other girls staring at them, he started to get embarrassed. But then Haru comes along as Ellie stabs him in the eye with her weapons, and then Shiki ends up hiding behind Rebecca's legs, which freaked her out. The 3 boys gave each other death stares, but then the girls literally screamed at them, telling them to deal with the monsters. They all stared once again as they are now itching to fight each other. But Natsu and Shiki get smacked in their heads by their waifus, telling them no fighting. If I was in that position, I would have done the same thing. Actually, I would probably beat the crap out of them for being so stupid, especially Shiki and Natsu. But then the rest of the crew managed to end up finding them as Shiki and Rebecca noticed that Homura has been found. Natsu was wondering how they all end up finding each other. Well, actually, it's due to the device that Weiss had developed, which he calls Heroes, which stands for Hexley Effects Radical Operation Searcher, which was the device that helped him search for all the other members. Now they must figure out a way to defeat the enemy, but luckily Herman called and suggests they might have a solution. She did some research on the island and found out that the true power of its creation is within the island itself, and the stone that Genesis has isn't the real thing. Now everyone is going to band together in saving this island from the evil source. And I freaking love this panel. And you know what? I might color this in one day. They all come up with a plan to have Haru, Shiki, and Natsu deal with Genesis, while the rest of them go after the real stone of creation. But they had to deal with these creatures first, as each girl, Ellie, Rebecca, and Lucy, are thinking about their husbandos and putting their faith into them. Speaking of the three, they are now facing Genesis as they manage to track him down thanks to Natsu's sense of smell, and to the bond and newfound friendship they work together to take him down. Meanwhile, Urza and the others are still dealing with the black creatures, as her and Homura told Lucy and Rebecca to find the real oasis. Then both girls were dragged by Ellie as their boys are dealing with the enemy, and now it's their turn. There they find a cave, as they also end up finding the goddess of creation, who turned out to be the old man from before and willing to reveal the secret of the island. Here we get the backstory of the creator, and what he talks about is reflected off the real manga artist Hiro Mashima. Now we do know that Mashima is a workaholic. I mean, the dude does everything at once. He loves to draw his manga so much that he gets to the point where he can't stop. And I believe this character represents Mashima himself. But the story is a little different, but it's still similar to Mashima's own issues. Within the Temple of Maga, there are several gods that he announces, and here is a young lad who tells the story of how he started out as creating his own story. He even describes each individual main character that the girls seem to recognize. And speaking of main character, that reminds me, people say that Lucy is the actual main character of Fairy Tail, but it is confirmed here in this canon crossover that Natsu is indeed the MC. I thought I'd point that out. Anyways, the creator continues telling his story about his non-stop drawing calls him into madness as the other gods start to worry about him. But then he suddenly can't stop drawing, and he goes into a breaking point of losing his own memories and can no longer tell the difference between fictional and reality. But then they discover the true identity of the oasis, which turned out to be the island itself, that he created after his powers has gone wild and that he lost his memories. He gained his memories back after his disciples stabbed him in the back. Everything on that island was his creation, including Genesis. But the power is still out of control, and now there's no way to stop it. However, Ellie, Rebecca, and Lucy are willing to destroy the island, but they just need to figure out how. Then this guy comes around and he had Plu with him, which gave Ellie an idea. Plu has the ability to destroy the Shadow Stones, so Lucy and Rebecca took down this guy, and then Ellie grabbed Plu and tossed him into the ground, which caused him to glow. Then Ellie and Lucy decided to join their powers together, including Rebecca's ether gear. Of course, this was during a time that she didn't even know about her own powers, but Ellie can sense it within her. The three girls channeled their energy into Plu, and at the same time, Natsu, Shiki, and Haru combined their own energy together and attacked Genesis. But then he gave him the Grand Chariot, but it failed as he realized that the Shadow Stone is growing weaker because of Plu and the girls. Now the guys take their chance and give him the final blow, destroying the Shadow Stone. And I will admit, this is a pretty cool panel. Now the villain has been defeated and the day is saved. Then the island started to change its shape as it's transforming back into its original form. Everyone has now been reunited, as they are also meeting new faces that the others haven't seen before. And now the place is starting to disappear along with the old man. But he does not worry, as everyone there has come to this place for a reason, and that is create new friends and create a bond from different worlds, as they are all known as heroes. They all say their goodbyes as they're now leaving back into their own universes. Now everyone is back in their own world, but with some extra people that don't belong there. Now that we have finished the final chapter of this crossover, I think it's about time we talk about the bonus this one. And personally, this one's my favorite out of all of them. Yes, it is one of those hot spring chapters, and here we start out with the cover page of our three main heroines. We start out with Ellie invited Rebecca and Lucy on an outdoor hot spring, but the two are a little concerned since it's literally in the middle of nowhere with no fences, no walls, no nothing, and they're afraid that peeping Toms might come around the corner. But Ellie convinced them to join, and then they had a little conversation, and then both Lucy and Rebecca remember the time when they both got naked and felt embarrassed about it, especially Lucy. Poor girl's gotten more naked just as much as Gray does. But then Lucy asks Ellie one of her embarrassments, but suddenly she can't remember. Yeah, now that I think about it, I don't really remember that much fan service from Ellie compared to the other two. She still has gotten them, and the fact that she can't remember any of it is kind of mind-blowing. Later on, they go from the outdoors hot spring into the Eden Zero's hot spring, where Lucy and Ellie meet the shining stars, Witch, Hermit, and Sister Ivory, and the skyscraper shows an amazing view of the story skies. Next, we see Witch giving Ellie a massage, and then she mentioned about activating the Etherion, which gave Hermit and Sister that expression as to what she just said. Yeah, those of you who don't know, Ellie possesses the magic power of Etherion, which probably makes her OP as hell. Natsu or Shiki ever started a fight with her, she would whoop their in a single blow. Next, we see Lucy chained up to that massage torture thingy as Rebecca and Homura thought it'd be funny. Then we get more hot spring scenes from the other female characters, and then Lucy invited Rebecca over for a special secret hot spring, which is just a giant pot of water with Natsu underneath it, as she plans on getting back at Rebecca for that massage torture device thingy. But then she turned around only to see that Rebecca is no longer there, and thought that she's already in the giant pot and decided to take a look inside. But she slipped, fell in, and Natsu heard the splash as he found it as a signal to heat up the pot. Lucy must have instructed him that if he hears someone fall in, he'll use his fire breathing to cause the water to boil. But then he recognized Lucy's scream and took a look inside, and there she is butt naked, as he is seeing everything. Although I shouldn't be too surprised because he has seen her naked a couple times before, and I want to discuss something about this at the end of this video. Now we see Rebecca, who is drawn by the smell of food and ends up getting lost. She tries to find that secret hot spring that Lucy prepared for her, but then she ends up finding Shiki instead and decided to join him. I do like this moment with Shiki and Rebecca hanging out together. Shiki seemed to be a little nervous when Rebecca was getting a little too close to him, and I think it's cute. Next, we see the actual couple sharing a spa and a hot spring together. Although Haru did walk in on her by accident and she threw her weapon in his eyes, but as soon as Haru was about to leave, Ellie decided to invite him over to stay. Now let's get to one of my favorite panels in this bonus chapter, and that is this. Honestly, I've never seen Lucy sit on Natsu's lap before. It's usually the other way around. I really do like that little switch, and seeing Natsu looking at her with that expression is always priceless to me. He knows that she is just as crazy as he is. Now we get to the ending of the bonus chapter with Mavis and Xiaomei sharing a hot spring together. Now Xiaomei thought it'd be a good idea to have some mail service for the female readers. You know what? I honestly wouldn't mind that. It's not very often you'll get to have male characters in the hot spring, but the thing is... Girl, how could you be okay with this? I'm with Mavis on this one. Now with all that out of the way, I would like to discuss of what I said in the first chapter about Shiki being a better written character than Natsu, and maybe even Haru. It is mostly because Shiki is still kind of a newcomer at this point, and he is like, how do you say, the creator's fresh idea of a new character, while Natsu is the older character from the past project. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still an awesome character. In fact, he's my favorite out of all the characters in this crossover. All I'm saying is that Natsu's character hasn't really been that fleshed out throughout the series of Fairy Tail. Even though he does have some great moments and that there are some development and growth to his character. But it took an awfully long time to get to that point, while Shiki's character was more fleshed out from beginning to end. Of course, that's how I saw it, and I know some of you have seen it differently. Now Haru, however, is somewhere somewhere in between. And to be honest, he's actually a lot more mature than these two combined. Okay, maybe he's not that mature because he still acts like an idiot. But seeing all these characters from Mashima's 3 most popular mangas has been quite a journey for me. But what's really interesting is the story behind it. You see this creator who is actually pretty much Hiro Mashima himself. From what I heard in the past, he's always claimed to be some sort of workaholic who loves drawing so much that he can't stop. I really like that he showed this side of him in the workplace, even though we already knew about it. It's still quite shocking to see him sharing his experience. Although I will say, he's probably still doing it today, because the guy drew 3 different chapters from 3 different series all in 1 week. He's got the Fairy Tail 100 Quest, he's got the Eden Zero, and his new series, Dead Rock, which is a monthly release. So it's actually made me think that this one might be a short series, but he might make it longer due to its popularity. I mean, that's what happened to Fairy Tail. It actually meant to be a short series, but due to its popularity, he decided to keep drawing. At least that's what I heard. Overall, Heroes Crossover was a fun adventure for me, seeing all these characters from different universes, different places, and different mangas, all from the one creator. Now, before I end off this video, I mentioned I wanted to discuss something about this little incident with Natsu and Lucy in the bonus chapter, and that people are commenting that Natsu likes to sexually harass Lucy, and yeah, I can see where they're coming from. There are times where he likes to grope her entering her house when she's changing, and most of the time, even though by accident, sees her naked. And we also did see him grab her in this crossover in front of the 2 other girls. Now, some people might consider that as an unhealthy relationship, but the thing is, it doesn't really happen that often. And I get the creator only did it as a joke, and at first, I will admit it was kind of funny. But then, after a while, it just gets overbearing. But during this scene, I think it's kind of funny because I really don't find this as sexual harassment, because all he's doing is looking at her, and her clothes burned off in the boiling water. And in the end, we see him taking care of her after she almost fainted in that boiling water. So yeah, this is a good ending for me, and nothing perverted at all. Well then everyone, thank you for watching, and if you are new here to this channel, you can please subscribe if you like to. You can also hit that notification button for new updates on my newest videos. Don't forget to check me out on X, TikTok, and Discord, and I will see you all in the next video. RoseRed17 out.